the Groundbreakers. Mondays to Thursdays. 7 to 9 p.m. on TUT FM.
Obviously, I wanted to become a pilot. And when I applied, I think, to the South African Airways, I rejected my application. We made some sort of stages where I can be able to just fly out from one city to the next city. And so I think that's when I realized that there was an opportunity. It took me around 3 to 4 years to get the operating license. And eventually I got it. And then, that's how it started. But it was a huge opportunity. Yeah. Because definitely, I'm going to say, 12 minutes actually before, no, so first 17 minutes before the hour 8 o'clock, the citizen has started busy fighting furiously so to make sure that we do get connected with our test. Technical issues happen from time to time, but just want to let you know that rest assured, graduate will be happening in a minute. But I don't want to say something. We started off by paying tribute to Mr. Don Mlangeninawa. And I told you that you can send in your text messages if you have any messages that you want to alert or send it towards them on the number 012-382-9257. That is 012-382-9257. I saw, actually, SA has also came out to say that mourning the passing of the legendary actor Don Mlangeni. They are saying that his talent, voice, and presence made everything unforgettable. He wasn't just an actor, he was part of our lives. May his soul rest in peace. Some goes out with the message about the ANC Secretary General Aviation Balula was then saying in the statement on X, which he wrote, and I quote, "We extend our heartfelt condolences to his family, friends, colleagues, and all South Africans who were then touched by his immense talent and contribution to our nation's arts and culture. His work not only entertained but also reflected the stories, struggles, and even times of our people." That is the ANC Secretary General, Mr. Aviation Balula, saying in a statement of X. And I have to then say, like I said after saying that we don't saw our townships come to life on screen. Right? We saw complex father figures, fraud heroes, and even real people being brought into our living rooms across the nation. His gift was just not to far, but also connect. And now when we honor his life, we have to then look also at the broader context of the South African arts landscape. Because Mr. Don Mlangeninawa was part of a movement that paved the way for today's storytellers and visual artists. I guess all of us can then say at the point that we wanted to become actors because of such a gentleman. I think our things is coming in properly now. Mr. Jonathan Osha is fighting furiously so to then make sure that we are connected. Let's give him a few minutes and then we'll come back. 15 minutes before the hour 8 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, the time breakers, and this is Private Graduate. Let's try to find out if everything is coming all right while so that we can have Private Graduate. Please don't go anywhere. That is definitely about 8 minutes. Let's make that 7 minutes before the hour 8 o'clock, and I have to say, if you're listening into TUT from 96.2, amplifying voices and pouring lives, do apologize for the very late start. You know what? This is live radio. A lot of technical issues happen throughout the day, throughout the night, and we have to try by all necessary means to fix them before we go on air. And I have to give a very shout out to Elisaja at Tepiso and the other Tepiso, even Angela, working furiously so, tirelessly so, to make sure that everything comes proper towards you. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight on Private Graduate, we then take a flight into a story that defines gravity. The story of a visionary who then dared, one can then say, to reimagine the South African skies, right? In a time when our youth unemployment looms large, and even economic inclusion falls out of reach for many of our brothers and sisters, a bit of a conversation tonight explores a path for less travel, aviation, entrepreneurship, and even franchising as tools for a youth empowerment. And even at the helm of this journey, we're speaking to Mr. Thokozani Miya, who's now the founder of Aviation, South Africa's first black-owned premium air taxi services. One can then say from humble beginnings to the navigating uncharted airways is building not only a business, but a blueprint for young people who can then rise or even through innovation, franchising, and even world vision. And this isn't about the planes, ladies and gentlemen. It is about the purpose, possibilities, and even plugging graduates into opportunities that changes lives. So one can then say, first thing I said that the runway is about to begin to inspiration. 5 minutes before the hour, it's a talk. Let me do this. Mr. Thokozani, Miya, good evening and welcome to the show.
Hey man, how you doing?
Can I really complain yourself?
Yeah, that's super.
You're definitely
That's super.
I want to ask
I'm
you,
alright.
do apologize for those issues. You saw how furiously we were fighting to make sure that we get you here. But because of those 5 minutes, I think we should start from the origins, right, and the vision. We'll start here. I was doing a little bit of research, and I remember you at one particular media house, you mentioned that your passion for aviation began in childhood. I want to start here and ask you, how did that early fascination evolve into the establishment of new aviation?
Yeah, look, I think obviously I wanted to become a pilot. And when I applied, I think, to South African Airways, they rejected my application. Then when I started working just after I finished teaching level, I was traveling a lot, as knowledgeable. I was working for international companies and so forth. Then I started traveling a lot, and then that passion came back. But obviously at the time, I thought to myself, maybe I can do something that is unique. And I started doing a lot of research, just looking at what can I do besides, the commercial flying and so forth. And then I came across to, NASA research that they had done previously. I think that research was done in 1982. Obviously it was about the concept of using smaller airports, right, closer to your destination and so forth. And then that's how it was born.
Yeah. Let's look at identifying the need, right? I think in a market that is dominated by large airplanes, what particular gap did you then see that led you to believe that there was room for that particular equity services in South Africa?
Funny enough, the reason why I thought there's a huge gap. I used to do, I was involved in a CNA project, that sells stationaries and so forth. And we used to install those point of sales, right? So we go to get and set up those point of sales and get shipped to different regions within South Africa. And then you then given a rooster of going to all the CNA. So you probably have, go from here's a view, from Java to here's a view, from here's a view to Retrospy, and so forth. And while I was doing that project, I was like, this man, we need some sort of a service where I can be able to just fly from one city to the next city. And so I think that's when I realized that there was an opportunity. And I started looking at even, doctors as well, and a lot of retailers as well. But stores in different cities and so forth. And I was like, okay, that could be the target market. Yeah.
And to come into that, I want to understand, the idea of using a space for private transport. I think it's very innovative. And if we can, given this moment of time, and I think after this, because we started very late, I'll take a very quick ad break, that we can start properly on a very clean slate without being hazard and all that. I want to understand if you can share more about what, this particular concept, how does it start? How does it then differentiate? How it's being different from other traditional aviation spaces or even services?
Yeah, look, actually, it's mostly used smaller aircraft, right? Compared to your Boeing 737s or Airbus 220, obviously when you're doing the domestic routes. So you could fit 3-4 people in the aircraft, right? It's a short distance travel, like from, flying from Nigeria to Rotterdam and whatever. So it's more, think of an Uber. It's what you're getting over from one destination to the next. But also, I think, if you look at how the South African the aviation job. In normal big airports, you've got flight camera, data, and paper. They're more like a cloud on top of things. So when you want to go to register, obviously you need to fly data. To the airport. And then from there you have to either take a taxi or like that. But it could just literally fly directly to register. Right? So that's why they had taxi comes in, because the bigger aircraft, they don't fly to small airports.
Well, that's very understandable. You know what? A minute before 8, even 30 seconds before 8, let's then take a very quick ad break, a very short ad break. 30 seconds ad break, and when we come back from there, we'll then delve into some of the challenges that you must face and the coming into the operations and the impact that you have and at the moment of time, and then early everything. Ladies and gentlemen, 8 after the 8 on the dot. We take a very quick ad break, and when we come back from that, we hear everything. Let me remind you, we are speaking to Mr. Thokozani Miya, who's now the founder of Miya Aviation Premium Air Taxi, and tonight we're speaking youth empowerment through franchising. Don't go anywhere, we'll definitely be back. But let's take a very quick and fast ad break. When I come back with 30 minutes translate, because we're going to start by the stage of trying to fight off with the computer system, going up and down. When we come back, we'll start on a very translate. My name is Tony Almadisa, and this is Thokozani. It is definitely 3 minutes after the hour, 8 o'clock. Let me remind you one time more that you are listening to TUTF from 96.2. We are amplifying voices, empowering lives, and this is Project Graduate. And I told you when I left to hear a minute ago that we are speaking to Mr. Thokozani Miya, who's now the founder of Miya Aviation Premium Air Taxi, and tonight our topic is youth empowerment through franchising. And but before I bring him back on the line, I want to give you a little bit about him so that you understand what kind of a man it is that we're talking to. Mr. Miya is then, like I said, the founder and CEO of Miya Aviation, which is South Africa's first on-demand premium taxi service. Now, with that background in computer science and even a passion for technology-driven solutions, he has then launched the Miya Aviation in 2011 to then create a critical gap in terms of short-haul air travel. And now, inspired by the tricks and waters he encountered during a visit to the United States, Mr. Miya then introduced a fleet of serious SR-22 aircraft to then enable fast, affordable, and even accessible regional flights, now connecting over 150 destinations in South Africa or even across South Africa. It is known for emerging innovation, entrepreneurship, and even a commitment to the empowering youth training, mentorship, and even job creation with the aviation sector. Now, let's bring you back on the line. Mr. Miya, once again, good evening and welcome to the campus.
Thank you.
Right, let's start here. Where am I? Sure. I wanted to come in and start here because I was looking at that. Starting an aviation company, I think it's no small feat. I want to understand before going forward, what are some of those significant hurdles or even challenges that you face in the early stages and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, look, I think we all have to do something. And then when you start doing it, and then you realize that, okay, cool, that's a bit of a huge challenge, right? And for me, I think challenge number one was, the money. To get the planes, obviously, and I was like, so where am I going to get this money? But then, at the time, I was contracting with some financial institution, and I decided that, I'm going to go to the US, because there were guys in the US who were doing this taxi already, in the country. And I reached out to them, sent an email, and said, no, you can come through, let us know when you're coming. And then I bought a ticket, went to the US. I was probably there for a month or so. And then I met the guys in the country. So when I went, it was more of like, I want to partner with them. I was going to say, look guys, I'm starting this concept in South Africa, can you partner with me? They're like, no, I don't think we can do South Africa. They were actually expanding in Brazil at the time. They're like, no, we don't think we can do it. But why don't you go to Duluth? It's North of America, where there's the series of schools manufactured, right? And then I took a flight from Fanta, one for Dilute. Obviously, when I came there, I told one of the guys who I think he was in the GM for marketing, and he was like, yeah, tomorrow we've got this committee, maybe you can come through and speak to us and tell us what is this that you do. Yeah. So then he took me out on the day, we went drinking, and I think he looked a bit concerned, that he was not sure. Yes, maybe I was looking around at the time. I was like, yeah, I don't know, okay, but come through. I don't really prepare a lot in terms of the presentation. I walked in, obviously, the room was full of white guys, mostly. I don't even remember what I said. I was like, look, I want to do this is what I plan and whatever. And I thought, yeah, we've got a guy in South Africa who actually sell and service these aircraft. Maybe you guys should do some sort of a partnership and you can take it from there. And that's how it started. So they called him while in the meeting in South Africa, and they told him, listen, we're going to put in one plane as a start. Let's see how this thing is going to happen. But there was one challenge as well. The guy in South Africa was like, if you can get an operating license, then we can start this concept, right? And that's when I realized, okay, I'm just going to go to South African services, license, and that license. No, it actually took me, around 3 to 4 years to get the operating license. And eventually, I got it, and that's how it started. But it was a huge effort.
Yeah, definitely understand. Now, let's come into the operations and even impact, right? Let's talk about future technology. I mean, utilizing ultra-wide mode aircraft is a very unique aspect for a service. And I want to understand how does this choice impact operational efficiency and even customer satisfaction?
The Cirrus is one of the best small aircraft. The reason why it was approved because mostly aviation authority, they look at the safety, so whatever they could do, they look at how safe it is. So if you look at it, it's got a single engine, piston engine, and already that's really not approved from commercial perspective, right? But the added benefit of the Cirrus, it's got a parachute. So if the engine fails, they could pull the parachute, not necessarily for the entire plane, for the entire. So that was another safety measure that they looked at, and they're like, okay, cool, I think we can approve this aircraft, for operation. And I mean, it looks great. It's got nice design, nice cockpit, it's got aircon, air seat, and so forth. Right? Yeah, so I think it's just right to kind of
Yeah, and now let's look at this again. And you might have touched upon it when we were then starting out, but I think you should then reiterate more because some of these people are not sure. When you're looking at into that, you offer flights to over 150 airports right within the country. We understand more how does this intensive network eventually enhance accessibility and even convenience for clients.
Yeah. I mean, in South Africa, we probably have more airports, but for me, it was more offering, flexibility for someone, right? So if you want to fly anywhere, you want to do your business. For me, it's more the flexibility than anything else, right? So if you want to do business somewhere in the boundaries, definitely we can provide that. So for me, it was more looking at how can I get people where they couldn't get before, through driving and so forth, and how easy it is to get there, And fair enough, I think when we started, there were a lot of corporates that were having insurance companies, retail companies, and so forth, So, because it was easy for them now to fly around. I mean, one of the insurance companies before us, and they used to drive a lot to, what is it, Nepal, right? And then they would do a sleep over. But now, they could just fly there one day, business.
Yeah.
So for them, it was more efficient, they saved money, and so forth, and then,
Yeah. I'm very curious on how it works out. Does it have an app, or do I have to call you and say, Mr. Mayor, I like to book a flight, I'm going into the airport, and I'd like to be back by 5 o'clock. How does everything work out?
no, we don't really have an app. So I think most people that we've been using that have been going to our website, right? And then they'll book the service there. So I think it's something that we've never looked at doing the app because we just generally had small customers that were coming, repeat customers and so on. And then what happened then later, I think just before COVID, we branched out to now doing available goods transportation, right? So when you talk about available goods transportation, you're talking about banknotes and all of precious metal type of thing. And then we started moving there as well because of the COVID, etc. And I think that has been such a big side of our business as well. And then we did a lot of, less on, moving the passenger in a way, right? Because obviously the demand went, it went down because of COVID, and people were less traveling. Now they can do online meetings and so forth. Then we branched out more into that more available goods transportation using using that as well.
Answered my question exactly like a CEO would, because my next question to you was to then say, COVID-19 pandemic, how did you then adapt to those unprecedented times, but you then kind of took it out coming in from the top of the head? What's coming into youth empowerment, right? And even franchising, like that is the initial conversation. Let's start off here. Given that South Africa's high employment rates, right? How do you see franchising as a tool of empowering young entrepreneurs? And before we even come into that, do explain to the average listener who's at home who might not understand what franchising is, then we can then take it from there.
Franchising, it's more of if you want to get to business easier, with the less risk, and then you're gonna do a lot of research and so forth. So then you buy into some sort of like an existing concept, right? So think of, imagine the McDonald's, so Starbucks and so forth. And those are really time-tested models that have worked before. So all you do, you just buy into that model, and then you just, work from there, So basically, it's an easy way of getting business. But what I've learned with franchise, especially when you're starting out in business, there's a lot of lessons that you can actually learn from that before you can actually branch out into starting your own business. And I think I was fortunate enough, 2002, to get into franchising, right? And I learned a lot in terms of cash management, credit, and just running the business aspect. Because if you look at it, the business is all about just making money and managing your costs and increasing your sales and your volumes and so forth. So that's one of the things that actually I learned there. And also the aspect that I've learned was how do I raise money, to literally buy this business. So those are some of the lessons that I've learned. And I think I'll obviously encourage the youth to look at how they can do franchising. Right? And if you look at sausage salon and so forth, right? They've got even the trolleys, the small trolleys that you could buy, and then you can go find a stand somewhere and sell, So for me, it's easy to get into business like that. And then you can start branching out into something bigger.
Yeah, and before I then come into the other questions, let's start with there to then say, how does one go about getting into franchise? Because I realize, I've noticed, right? I think when you go into certain townships, right, you don't find these bigger companies, corporates, that I think someone that franchise you'll find, for instance, is on social media, there's Maluleta Spa. Those people renting the franchise, yeah. And I also think maybe even you say, because yeah, I think they do, those are the companies. But how does one eventually go about it? Do they then look into their service to say, no, Thokozani, there's a short of there's some licensing and things. How does one go about it? I tried to look it up. I saw one particular store, it was saying you can buy into it by 1.5 million rands. I'm not sure that it covers everything, the location, the building. They're just making it simpler for you. You just have to then sort out the internal affairs of this. How does one go about it?
Yeah, look, I think when I started franchising, obviously when you pick a franchise that you want to buy, it's going to be based on the cash that you have, right? And the amount of money that you can be able to raise. So I think first time when I started researching franchise, and then I'll have interviews, they'll call me to come and talk to them. Then they'll ask me, have you identified the location? Why did you think that this type of franchise will work? And so forth. So then we'll have to see if you've done some sort of work behind the scene, about the franchise itself. But, franchise, if we think about it, a lot of, the banks, they actually like the money because the risk is minimal, right? Even though they still want surety for the loan, but you could obviously overcome that by going to, when there was a company, I think it used to be part of government, but I'm sure now it's been renamed to something like area or safer or whatever, right? So they will do like a surety thing. So if you go to a bank and say, look, I'm looking for 1.5 or whatever, they're going to say, okay, sure, we want to buy a franchise, yes, we do support this type of franchise, but we want surety on the loan. So if you go to the safer area or whatever, like they do it, then they do a surety, right? So sometimes they say, okay, we can only give the surety up to 80%, right? And then you don't have to come up with 20%, right? And in most cases, they do that. And sometimes they look at it, they say, no, we're going to give you 60%, and we'll come up with 40%. So it's easy to raise money in that sense. So when you do a franchise, but I wouldn't, if you're starting out, I wouldn't say go for the big ones, okay? And because, if you look at you say spas and whatever, yes, the shops, I think they come around 6 million, but they will say we want unfunded finance money that you have in your bank account about 1.2 million or whatever the case. You need to show that you've got some sort of money before you could actually go to a bank and say, can you give me the rest of that loan? But if it's not small, it's like a think social salon, whatever. Those are easy to acquire, And then you can literally just build from there. If you have, last time I checked, your team players were like 500,000, even 400,000, right? So if you have to go to a bank and say, I'm looking to buy a team player, it's 150,000, right? So if you have to come up with 20% of that, so it makes it easy for you to come up with that sort of money. But then you can build out from there. So depending on, how much your turnover is, how much you made, and so forth. Then you can either buy something bigger. Now that you've got track record, you can go back to the bank and say, look, I'm looking for bigger amount, and so forth.
And then before we continue, because you say something that's very interesting, and for one person of my stage, I've been trying to make that research, and I think maybe if life doesn't really work out, we might try to go into that direction. It's not very, how important is this, right? To look into those particular stores that one can have within the townships, or should one be looking out for those that can operate within CBDs? For instance, I can't really say I'm going to go for This, for instance, is skiers. They get this up on Thokozani. That's, right. But it was yeah. Yeah, look, I think one of the shocker for me, actually, when I bought Thokozani at the time, it was in Everton Malls, one of the malls down there, right? And obviously, I mean, the guys that frequent there, they come from Burnley Street, right? And then at the time, the entry level of the hot dog or the class range, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then you still have to add Coke and so forth, so you needed like a 15, 20 rand. And then at the time, it was big money. And then just opposite me, there was a king pie. They were selling pie for 450, I think, and the Coke was about 450 as well. So you can usually say that if you got 10 rand, you got a meal. Yeah. You can't buy from me because it was already expensive. Yeah. And then the only market thing that was buying from me at the time was, the lead guys were having wild and wild people. But it was not a lot of those guys. And then I needed to improvise. I didn't get to go now. They got a helper, like a shipper. So you take a rod, you put chips, and then you put sauces. And then we used to sell it for 450. So we were then in the market of selling it, right? And then we started making more money, But, I mean, to answer your question in short, is you need to look at where you want to sell. So if you want to sell burgers, or you want to go for stairs, then obviously you need to go to, like, I don't know, your sunny sides or England or whatever. But you can't bring it to France or to somewhere. But I think now, people take off for things like what is this, pizza, it's big, it's very famous, I think what it's called. But, I mean, you need to look at what is the appetite of people. So you need to do your research thoroughly, and then, you work with it. And eventually, I think it is to do justice to the graduates that are listening, and even the potential enterprise to ask you to say, is the new company exploring franchises opportunity? And if so, how can the young graduates become part? We have to solve that. No, not necessarily. I'm looking for bigger money for the business, but I don't know. I mean, if we're doing franchise in the future, definitely. But I don't know how much we'll sell it now. But for me, it's better to start small, especially if you're starting out. I think I was lucky enough, even though I think I was exposed to people that were already doing business. And I remember we used to stay with my aunt at the time. She used to like to just sell, and then she would just say, hey man, just come with me, we're going to go sell there's my son to Sunday, and then we'll go sell Coke and chips and stuff. For me, I was lucky to have those opportunities. And then just when I started at TNT, 94, street bashes were a big thing for the podcast. So I come from Bushaway, and Bushaway we used to do these street bashes. And because of the experience that I had, and I started telling one of the guys, and then if you can do street bashes in December and so on. And then we were doing that, so we do street bashes. We sell, obviously, those nice drinks and hot dogs and so forth. So for me, I had that background, before I could go and tackle bigger things. It doesn't mean that you can't, as long as if you've done your research properly and so forth. You know what, it is definitely 25 minutes after the hour, 8 o'clock, and I'd like to remind everyone that they are still listening to TUT FM 96.2, amplifying voices and empowering lives, and this is Private Graduate. We are speaking to Mr. Thokozani Miya, who's the founder of Miya Aviation. Mr. Thokozani, we need to come into this because the nature of the show itself is says, like a graduate, right? want to come in and ask about opportunities for graduates as this show that it is for them. Does Miya Aviation integrate certain or even recent graduates into its operations? What roles are there that are available for graduates?
Yeah, within the aviation space, it's quite tricky, especially if you want to become a pilot, right? And I always tell guys that, getting into aviation, especially if you want to be a pilot, you can't just get your license and you start flying, Even us, we are required to hire people that have got 1,000 plus hours. And I think it's very difficult for people to come in, and work as a small operation. So if you're coming to aviation, you must just know that it's going to take you longer, right? But we can obviously give you some opportunities to, build up the hours and so forth. But it's not necessary that, you start working as a pilot, right? So that's a challenge within the aviation.
Yeah. I want to plug in with the point that you're making in terms of things like this, in terms of skills and development. You then say, what specific skills do you believe that graduates, can acquire by working within the aviation industry, particularly within your company?
Particularly within our company, obviously, it's pilot, I guess, and a bit of operations side, becoming an operation manager, right? I think that would be also some sort of like a stepping stone, even though you don't get an opportunity to fly, but you get to understand how to do this, how to have dispatch, flight planning, and so forth, right? Planning the route. That's a very nice background to have when you start flying, especially when you're watching on your license and stuff, right? So I think that if there's opportunity, people must just look out there, learn things and whatever. We definitely be posting things if there's something like that.
And you know what, 29 before, I must say, after 8, take one last question, we take a very quick ad break. When you come back from that, I want us to then focus on the broader perspectives of youth and even entrepreneurship. Because now you're saying this, because we might step a little bit out within the category of graduates. Want to take your word for you to say, what advice would you then give to graduates that are aspiring to enter the aviation industry or even start their own ventures? Then after taking that break, we'll come into the broader perspective.
Yeah, look, I think for me, it's, you have to follow your passion, right? So if you learn computers and you like to develop it, I'll say hone in on that stuff, right? And learn how then to monetize that, that aspect of yourself, of your passion, right? And I think for me, it's more of like, building the knowledge base around what you like. If you're someone that likes cooking, right? And then you want to get it into selling food, you need to look at what people are doing out there, what can I do better, right? And then how can I enter that market? Because I think people will like, I want to do something creative, and do something similar to what the other person is doing, right? So you just become a normal person. For me, you need to look at, I want to sell something, but I just don't want to sell anything. What can I sell, right? And there's a lot of other services that you can look at. People are very busy. People need services because they spend time in offices. They don't have time. So you try and sell those services to people. So you need to identify what are the services that you can sell to those people. So for me, it's, learn as much as you can within that space that you want to operate from. Don't do something because of someone is doing it.
I'll take your word for it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is definitely 29 minutes before the hour 9 o'clock. I'm sure that Sir Harris will come in and take over to give you the date night. But we're so far from over. We're still speaking to Mr. Thokozani Miya, and now we're speaking empowerment through franchise. But now we're broadening in that aspect, right? We're speaking the broader perspectives of youth and entrepreneurship when we come back from this. I want you to tell me that you are. Send in your questions. Send in your voice notes, your comments on the number 012-382-9257. 012-382-9257. This is Power Graduate. We'll take a quick ad break and then come back from there. We're speaking some of the legacy that this gentleman might want to leave, and also the most important, entrepreneurship, and even the broader perspectives on empowerment and entrepreneurship. Didn't go anywhere. This is what Power Graduate. 25 minutes before the hour 9 o'clock, etc. I told you countless times you need to prepare other things in advance. But what happens? It's not radio. Such mistakes happen. But I'm also one of them say, without them, what are we? During 4 hours, I'm going to have to apologize for the earlier coughs that were made before we took the outbreak. I thought I needed to pinch out and work it out. But we're not always tired because time is not on our side. Mr. Mayor, I want to come into this particular angle of my questioning, looking into the broader perspectives on youth and even on employment or entrepreneurship. And before I went for that quick ad break, we were giving advice to, graduates that are aspiring to be part of the aviation industry or even starting their own ventures. When I start here now and ask you about that entrepreneur mindset to say, what qualities do you believe that are essential for the young entrepreneurs to then succeed in today's competitive industry, if one can say?
Yeah, look, I think you need to be persistent, right? And, you need to be passionate. You need to be a risk taker. And because sometimes you need to know that you might not eat for a while, right? Or pay yourself. Right? So you need those type of quality as a person, right? And some they make it quick, some they make it very late. But I think business itself, it takes a very long time. You need a proper support structure as well, right? When you start out. Because really, it's going to take you time to really make it.
Yeah. And you know what? I wanted to ask you this because just yesterday I was speaking to one particular entrepreneur, but the guy is actually an entrepreneur and investor, and even an author. He was writing a book, and the book was titled, it's launching in May. So the title of the book is Entrepreneurship is Not for Everyone, Is It For You? And I asked him one question to say, what are, 3, I would say, qualities that one would then identify to say, I'm an entrepreneur, and what are the 2 that would then say, we could look at this particular person and say that, this one is not going to make it. Well, what is it? When you're looking at a person who is saying, I want to be an entrepreneur, what 3 things that are you looking into them to then say, this person can make it, or this person cannot make it?
Yeah, and this is, when you present it in front of the investors and stuff, you're trying to get money. Sometimes they don't really look at the idea itself, right? But they look at how passionate are you with what you present to them, right? They look at that fire that you have. Because once you have that fire, they know everything else will fall off in place. So you always look at the person, that fire, that, I want to do it, this is how I want to do it. And, yeah, so if someone can say something, they call it elevator pitch. If someone can say something within, 10 seconds or whatever the case may be, and then you can hear what they say, that's what you're looking for. Because that person, they know what they're talking about, and then they actually have it right again, right? And mostly the people that are fluffy, they want to look at the notes, and you know very well that they really don't know what they're talking about. It's easy, when you sit with them, they're not sure what you're talking about, and you can pick it up quick. And your meeting takes longer than it's supposed to be. Right? So yeah, that's I suppose that's how you identify someone that they're really hungry, they've really done a research on what they are doing. Because it will be so easy to say, this is what I'm going to do, these are the market strategy, these are the numbers, and so on. So you can feel that, okay, cool, this person is, they really know what they're talking about. Yeah. And also, I think maybe last week I was speaking to one particular guest on this particular platform that I'm hosting you on, and they were speaking about those particular soft skills that some entrepreneurs rely upon, right? And I want to come and ask you to then say, how is it, or how can then educational institutions, better prepare students for entrepreneurial ventures, especially in specialized industries like aviation, for instance? I guess you're never gonna really thoroughly prepare people, right? But I think institution can expose to people to how they can write pre-stock, for example. And I think most of the institutions are already doing that, SWOT analysis and so on. But also, it's mostly how do you write your business plan, how do you do your research, and so forth. Right? So those are the softer skills, as well as how you can raise money and so forth. Right? So those, I think I'll say those are the softer skills that institution can prepare people. And I suppose they could then have assignments where they come up with something and go and implement it. For example, as an assignment, right? So, like, okay, cool, send me a hot dog or whatever, and then package it and go sell it and come back and tell me how much you make. So those will be real life tests for people. Because what I've noticed with people, they think, when I start business, I'll make money. But business is also about selling. Yeah. Right? So you need to go out there and sell. And most people, they don't know how to sell. Right? They don't know how to teach something to someone. Right? And you're like, okay, I want to start a firm, but have you sold ads before? So the people are like, oh yeah, I've got an office, reception and whatever, okay, now in business. But how do you sell? So if you look at the models of, companies like your IBMs, your Apples, and whatever, they've got the sales team that goes out there and sell. And that will be the difficult part, because how do you close something and make money? So I think that's where most people fail. How do I sell your stock trade? Something. And you made at a certain point when you were then answering that made me to then realize something about money. And I realized a lot of people complain about money in terms of not having enough finances for a startup. When I understand that government support, in your own experience and perspective, how efficient government initiatives in terms of supporting young entrepreneurs and where can improvements be made? To be honest, I went to founders before, and I think it takes too long for them to approve the application. It could take 18 months, 2 years, 3 years. The market has shifted, So I think they need to either put the right resources to manage, those support for young entrepreneurs. And people don't understand the business, and I don't even know how to do it, because when most of the guys that go and speak to that, they don't even understand the business plan or the pitch that that you are giving them. Right? They'll just go through a checklist and say, okay, give me this, I'm giving, and then you spend 6 months, they're asking you the same thing, I really think that they can keep the the people that are receiving these applications, which I acknowledge and so forth. And I've noticed that when my partner, we got funding from one of the, private funders, equity. And the guys, they just came and asked me how the business works and so forth, and they asked me, a quick history on finance. Within a week, that was done. And it was obviously big money. So for me, they had to, the government equip the people and train them for those type of situations,
And then speaking of those private funders, then brings in, even boils down a question in terms of community engagement. To then ask to say, how important is then community support and even engagement in terms of fostering, let me say, successful young people-led enterprises or even led businesses?
I didn't get the question. Can you just repeat it?
I was then saying, coming in from what you're saying, it then speaks about community engagement. To say, how important is community support, even engagement in terms of fostering or even fostering successful youth-led businesses?
Community, obviously, if it's a service that they need, obviously it's something that will offer, right? I think it's a very tricky question that you're asking me, but, as long as it's something that can be used, the community can use, I think they could be able to engage with those particular youth and use the services, It's into a passion. It's quite a tricky one, but yeah, I think it's more of how they can support the services, right? So instead of you buying tomato from Spar, if you've got a guy that is already selling, either they're planting them from the backyard or whatever, I mean the community can, go for those type of services.
You know what, that is definitely a 13 minutes before the hour and a half, and soon after that, so yes, already direct William was saying, we'll come over and take up this whole stage and begin a day night show. And with Mr. Miya, we were then speaking the broader perspectives on youth and entrepreneurship. And I want to take the last portion coming in from the segment, and I will come to the future outlook and even legacy of your company. From everything that I've said, and I've come to realize that with the guests that I've had on this show that we spoke about entrepreneurship, there's one particular question that lingers with that. Whether people fear failure, they definitely fear failure. How do you overcome this fear? And one can then say, and what advice can you offer to, fresh made of entrepreneurs, if I would say?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the process, right? So if you fear failure, then I don't really think entrepreneurship will be for you, right? For me, you're taking a risk. So, and part of those failures, you gain a lot of knowledge that you could do better. You cannot go into start something, a business, and then you think that you're going to flourish without failure. And a couple of ideas that you can come up with businesses, they're definitely going to fail. And then you're going to say, okay, could you go back? Where did I fail? And so forth. So you have to know that failure is going to be part of the process.
You know what? It was about 10 minutes before closing up this conversation and our time with the band. Let's look into your legacy, right? What do you see aviation in the next 5 years to 10 years, and what are your plans for expansion?
For me, we're now looking at doing better into Africa, international. The company has also issued with the international service license, so that's what we're looking at. To become the biggest private logistic company. And one day when I'm older, maybe 100, and I'll sit down and say, yeah, cool. I started something and now it's big and so forth. And yeah, maybe even my kids taking over, but my kids are just want to do other stuff. They all want to become superstars, and other wants to become musicians. So yeah, but I think for me it's more of when I started Miya, it started within South Africa, we started flying in the neighboring countries. I want to see it flying international, being recognized in those international platforms.
How on earth that you're saying the proper pronunciation now when we left with a couple of minutes? I've been saying now, and then we should have done it saying that's new. I'm reading it and I saw her. They don't like it. Yeah, it's not no. It's like it's like it's actually Greek for the text. Yeah. So that's how you pronounce it, yeah. But I've been saying, I'm not saying, oh, shoot, come back. I mean, this is the proper pronunciation. I forgive you. Well, that's like into sustainability. A lot of companies need to be sustainable, and what steps is there in Miya Aviation are taken to ensure environmentally sustainable operations?
It's a better thing. I think there's fewer new fewer versions but obviously the way that are introducing aircraft have been streamlined for sustainability and stuff, right? So for us, obviously, it's something that we have obviously using the latest fleet and so forth. And it's still going to take obviously a long time generally in the world, to get to where you fly if you type of aircraft that's already not going to happen anytime soon. But I think a lot of the manufacturers are looking at how they can, introduce aircraft that's, where they're sustainable within the environmental perspective.
Yeah. And you know what? So, let's give a moment of time where we let loose and then just break down some pointers. I wouldn't have done justice if I didn't ask you this, or this particular two questions in front of that I put eventually at the last given moments of the show. One can ask, right? Well, what book has had the most significant impact in terms of the entrepreneurial journey that you can even recommend to those young entrepreneurs that are coming up with?
The book that actually changed my mind, it was Compounding. Right? And I've forgotten who was that author, so if you guys can Google and check it. I read it, and I also read an audio. But Compounding effect was, it talks about every day you do your 1% or 2%, right? So you've got 100%, right? So you're always doing something that adds up into your 100%. It's a very nice book. It actually changed how I think in general about things, So if you want to build a house, you start small. You look for a stand, whatever it is. But that's one book that I could recommend. I've forgotten but it's called Compounding Effect.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the man Compounding Effect there. Definitely, I'll definitely go and also research about it and may find the author of some of this, and I'll try to dissect it coming in tomorrow's show. And if one can then ask right now, what is our dreams? What are dreams of your daily routine, and how do you stay productive?
Daily routine? Like everyone. You wake up in the morning, brush your teeth. Do you
go to the gym?
Yeah, well, I'm still in shape. It's just a normal day, I guess. Like everyone. I think when you start in life, obviously your day was crazy. And I remember when I used to start out. In fact, I used to own a company called T that we used to do corporate training. And I used to have do corporate coding from some company in Helsinki. So and we had a studio downtown in Johannesburg. So when I used to leave work, I used to go and collect the orders, and then I would drive to Helsinki to deliver the orders. And I would be back at 12 midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. And the very next day at 8 o'clock I must be at work. So so sometimes when you're starting out and whatever, that's will be your daily life. So but if you press in that life, I don't think that will be You know what? 5 minutes before the hour, 1 o'clock, my time has come to an end with me. But you know what? Because the person that is supposed to come in is not walked in the studio. I'll take 2 questions and I'll let you go. People do have much of that today. People have, thoughts they live by. Just want to take things up yours to say, what could you live by that keeps you motivated? If you have any. Well, it's not done until it's done. Yeah, so that's about that. I'm not a big person in code, but I think it's done until it's not. It's not done until it's done. Yeah, definitely. Beautiful work. Reminds me of what I can agree with the guy that I used to do this show with now is doing the show before me. He always says when he leaves every single night, you don't stop because you're tired. You stop because you're done. And now because you're about to be done, I give it this platform to then close it up. What do you say to the next generation of entrepreneurs? People that have close it up. This is a space to close it up. Your time to close it up. Yeah, I think for me the message for people who I think it just do a lot of work in terms of research. So understand the environment, be unique in what you want to put out there, and just work hard and just understand the intricacies of running the business and how you solve your ideas and so forth. And I think the most other aspect is just bring the right partners in the business, So for me, that could be the kind of stuff. With that being said, Mr. Miya, I want to thank you so much for making time to speak with us this evening, even though at the beginning we had a bumpy road. The skyways were not clear, but eventually the plane did take off and it did land. Landing with us running on the runway now. I want to say thank you so much for yourself for making time to speak with us this evening. Do have yourself a lovely evening. Until next time. Thank you for inviting me. Alright, so
The Groundbreakers, Mondays to Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. on TUT FM.